Hi, I'm Ben Hart, and this is Thailand. So the title of this video, we're talking about so-called digital wallet Tilapia. That's what I've been kind of calling it for those who've been watching videos on this topic on this channel for a while now. We're talking actually about so-called digital wallet tokens, which this topic came up roughly about a year ago when this new coalition government took over, and we saw basically a push, in my mind, to implement basically World Economic Forum policies, mostly in the form of this digital money and what they're calling digital wallet tokens. I've come to call them digital wallet tilapia because there's a situation here where foreign tilapia fish were introduced into the Thai ecosystem here in Thailand, and they're having real problems because the tilapia are devouring the sort of the local fish, the local breeds of flora and fauna within the ecosystem that's having a detrimental impact overall upon the environment here in Thailand. And that's its own issue. But I started calling it digital wallet tilapia because if you get into the issue of what's called Gresham's law, this law stipulates in economics that bad money drives out good money. And in the case of just cash, what we've been used to dealing with here in Thailand, banknotes via the Bank of Thailand, this has been working for hundreds, well, at least decades, I should say, but for some time now, and without much of a problem. And now we've seen this really concerted push for this digital money. And this is in conjunction, this isn't just Thailand that we're seeing these actors out there, if you will, that are really trying to push this digitization. We're seeing it across the board in many other countries. That's why I bring up the World Economic Forum with their platitudes of you'll own nothing and be happy, and go on to digital money, which will end up being a totalitarian system of total surveillance and effectively control over what you can do with your own capital, basically. And as we've discussed in other videos, when they rolled out this so-called digital wallet, I've done a bunch of videos talking about, they've said it can only be spent in certain places, it can only be spent on certain things, it effectively has an expiration date. Again, I've asked the question many times, how is this money? It doesn't fit the definition, in my opinion, of money per se. Not even to get into sort of the old school definition, to quote J.P. Morgan, 1912, congressional testimony, gold is money, everything else is bank credit. That being said, bank credit is not in and of itself a problem. I have no problem with bank notes and cash as long as it has an element of privacy inherent to it. These digital wallet tokens, digital wallet tilapia, has none of that. And I think it will ultimately warp the economy if this is introduced, basically to start with because of Gresham's law, and that's not where it ends. It leads, in my opinion, to all kinds of possible problems with regard to creating all kinds of artificial inflation, deflation, and again, just basic notions of liberty in terms of, wanting to use a medium of exchange that's not fully surveillable, fully controllable. Again, people just wanting to live their lives and have sound money as a medium of exchange for goods and services. That said, I thought of making this video after reading a recent article from the Bangkok Post. So headline, 1/3 of Thais very angry if handout funds canceled. Well, interesting, one third of Thais very angry if handout funds canceled. Well, this is how handouts work. I remember my father telling me years ago, once a government benefit is created, have fun trying to get rid of it because, people then get kind of an entitlement mentality and expect it. So again, they came out with this big push for this handout, and meanwhile, it's sort of touted as if they have some kind of mandate for this. Let's remember, Pheu Thai, the so-called core coalition party, doesn't have this major mandate to do this to begin with. So I think that's worth noting. But that said, okay, the handout, which I can understand. I'm not a completely callous person. I do understand that there are Thais that are in need of some relief here in Thailand, especially in light of the fact that we've had years of real problems in the economy, not least of which being shut down by international mandates via the WHO, resulting in effectively Thailand's economy, especially her tourism economy, being completely moribund, low the past roughly 2.5 to 4 years now. We're seeing it recover, and to their credit, this current government has taken as many steps as they possibly can to go ahead and see that we have a good high season in terms of tourism and foreign exchange coming in from that. So kudos to them on that. But this continued push for this digital tokenization, I find this very concerning. So quoting directly, again from Bangkok Post, bangkokpost.com, article, again titled, "1/3 of Thais Very Angry if Handout Funds Canceled." Quoting directly, the National Institute of Development Administration poll, or NIDA poll, asked 2,000 respondents nationwide on October 7 through 9 for their opinions on how the 10,000 baht cash payment should be distributed in the second phase of the government's economic stimulus handout program. Let's bear in mind, the first phase was cash, and this only happened after pretty substantial pushback from folks saying, yeah, we don't want this non-money. If you're going to give us some handout, you know, give us real money, basically, was sort of the attitude. So there was kind of a half measure where they said, okay, well, we'll hand out this first half as best we can in cash, which they went ahead and did. And again, as I've discussed in other videos, I have real problems with the funding on this as well, because notwithstanding the platitudes that have come from this government low this past year, look, at the end of the day, the government's going to have to go into more debt in the end for this handout. And quite honestly, I don't love the notion of a handout to begin with. It's Keynesian. I've quoted this before. Stalin once said that socialism is communism in a hurry. Well, Keynesianism is socialism by subterfuge. And that's what we're dealing with here. This handout, again, while I understand there are people that are in need of some level of relief, this will have lasting and, in my opinion, negative ramifications for both the currency and possibly the economy, as all this money is being put out into the economy without the creation of concomitant goods and services. But leaving that aside, what's even more important is the fact that, again, to digitize Thailand's economy, I think that this is recipe for absolute disaster. And why do I think that? Well, let's go back to 1997. In 1997, we saw the financialized Thailand, if you will, sort of the sort of one economy of Thailand, the financialized economy of Thailand, really go through major turbulence. I mean, to the point where it became, basically, the country had to open its nose, if you will, in terms of foreign exchange in order to keep the baht fully convertible, which, to their credit, Thailand did keep it fully convertible on the international exchange market. But that being said, it hurt the country a lot. I remember getting here some 17 years ago and still seeing the aftermath of 1997 in the form of unfinished buildings, etc. But the one thing that inoculated Thailand's real economy, the reality for people living here, was the fact that we had a so-called informal, or as the banker caste, if you want to call it that, would say, gray economy, which they only say that because they want to track, trace, and control everything and extract wealth, quite honestly, from the lower strata of the socioeconomic system here in Thailand via all of these financial apps and digital money and all kinds of other methodologies. Again, this is problematic for everybody in Thailand, not least of which, quite honestly, I think it targets, frankly, the weakest in the Thai economy, the working poor, the lowest segment of the socioeconomic strata, and it hits them the hardest in the longer term, especially if you consider, again, totalitarian mechanism for total surveillance and control. That being said, let's get into this poll, because I find it interesting the way that this is all being framed within this article. That said, quoting directly, so they asked like 4 questions here. 1, the government decides to cancel the second phase of the stimulus handout, offering neither cash nor digital money. So that's the first one. We just give you nothing else. Well, guess how that came out? 41% said they'd be very angry. Well, yeah, they want what they perceive to be their money at this point. They've created the expectation of an entitlement. Now they're going to take it back. 41% of people aren't happy about that. 34% say they're not angry at all. Well, those are probably the folks kind of on my wavelength that are like, hey, Keynesianism is problematic, creates inflation, creates all kinds of distortions within your monetary system as well as your overall economy. It's basically handing out, money without creating concomitant goods and services. And then on top of that, it creates all kinds of budget deficit problems and also the problem of increasing the national debt, which all of us Thais will have to eventually pay back. That's the problem. Then we've got 14% fairly angry, 9.14% slightly angry, and 0.34% did not know or were not interested. Yeah, like they wake a guy up and, yeah, I don't care, whatever. That said, again, how this is framed is really fascinating. Second one, the government distributes the handout in the form of digital money, but in an amount less than 10,000 baht, such as 5,000 baht. Okay. 40% not angry at all, 24% very angry, 21% fairly angry, 13.64% slightly angry, and again, 0.34% didn't know or weren't interested. That was the person they woke up who was probably taking a nap and didn't want to talk about this stuff. That said, moving forward, again, and notice again, not a cash option, just, okay, it's digital money again, but it's 5,000 rather than 10,000. Quoting further, the government offers 10,000 baht in full in digital money. Now, this one was very interesting. 60.54% not angry at all. Well, I would love to know who those folks are, because I think that they may not fully understand the consequences of creating these digital tokens in the first place. The other thing is, I've constantly questioned the sample sizes, and also I'd love to know the sample set of these folks. They basically said, oh, only people nationwide. Well, are they only surveying people that are eligible for this? Because that would have a dramatic sort of skewing effect on these poll results as well. The people that aren't going to get it one way or the other, but will still be saddled with the national debt of it, I'm betting they feel a different way. That said, 17.53% slightly angry, 12.11% fairly angry, 9.31% very angry, and 0.051% did not know, were not interested. So, okay, but again, notice how it's framed. So the first one is cancel the second phase altogether. You get no more money. This is how they're framing. Oh, you can get nothing. That's your one choice. Or you can get digital money, but it's less than 10,000. Or you can get 10,000 in full, but it's only digital money. And then finally, we come down to number 4, the government pays in 2 installments of 5,000 baht in digital money. So again, the only choices being presented in the survey are nothing at all or all digital options. Quoting further, 60.88% not angry at all, 20.07% slightly angry, 10.58% fairly angry, 8.30% very angry, 0.17% did not know or were not interested. So interesting there. Now then it does go over and ask ineligible recipients. Quoting directly, when the pollster asked the ineligible recipients about the 10,000 baht stimulus handout scheme, the answers were as follows. 29.44% said the government should give the handout to all groups of people regardless of their income or assets. Well, yeah, if somebody, that's the classic sort of, if you're getting a handout, why aren't I getting a handout? Again, once you create in people's minds the expectation of an entitlement or a benefit, it's hard to make that expectation go away. And this needs to really be driven home, because this expectation was sort of created out of whole cloth. And again, there's no fundamental underlying electoral mandate for this. Notwithstanding how the press has sort of framed it, yeah, one of the coalition parties had this as an agenda item, but again, they didn't have some massive electoral mandate to get this done, and they definitely didn't have an electoral mandate. Maybe they might have had some level of a mandate for a handout per se, because who's ever going to turn down free money? But was there a massive mandate for digital totalitarian tokens that can surveil, track, and trace all of our transactions, can only be used in certain circumstances within a certain geographic proximity from people's homes and on certain things, and can expire based on whenever the controllers of this so-called digital tokenization decide to turn this quote-unquote money on and off? Was there some mandate for that? I don't remember one. I certainly don't think there was one. Again, how this is framed is really quite interesting. Going back here, then 25.4% disagreed with the handout offer, saying no one should receive the 10,000 baht. And again, I don't think these are going to be people that, felt like, hey, there aren't people that need relief. It's just generally speaking, again, just handing out money is never a great idea. If you have any doubt about that, look at the state of the economies now in the West and the aftermath of so-called COVID, where we're seeing a massive dearth in terms of motivation, in terms of the entrepreneurial spirit, we're also seeing, massive problems in terms of massive inflation in many of these countries that basically just printed money or took money that was already in the budget and just handed it out to people. It's causing all kinds of warping effects in the traditional economy. Quoting further, 25.47% disagreed with the handout offer, saying no one should receive the 10,000 baht, while 25.25% said the handout should be given to people in vulnerable groups only, such as the disabled. So amongst the people who couldn't get it, over 50%, roughly about 50.75% said either don't do it at all or only give it to people who really need it. Now, that tends to be how I think on this. Either let's not do this or, okay, we'll do a handout, but let's give it to people who really, really need it. Not, again, we saw this with stimulus checks back in America. I remember my brother telling me like 1 year into the so-called pandemic when they were, just handing out checks and the PPP program, money just getting handed out everywhere. And weird things started happening, like all kinds of goods, like collector's items that had never really had any kind of major market started just going through the roof, like shoes and vintage t-shirts. I remember my brother telling me that the vintage wrestling t-shirt market had gone through the roof. Well, why would that be? Could it be because people have a bunch of windfall fake money that they're out just buying stuff that they don't really need? Again, this is how it warps the system, is when you give out this kind of money and it creates these markets because it's an inefficient mechanism. Again, price discovery, just standard sound money economics. The capital goes where it's most efficient, where it's actually needed, where there's actual demand. When you create fake money and just hand it out, people start buying, really honestly, stupid stuff with it. And I mean, we sort of saw that at that time with regard to stimulus checks in the American economy. And what worries me over here is you can end up with the same thing. Now, they bring in the digital token to say, oh, this is a way of curtailing that. Well, I don't want totalitarianism to be used as the cure for bad economic policy. Meanwhile, something else people forget about that happened in the aftermath of all the stimulus checks was the creation of the so-called NFTs. You remember NFTs, non-fungible tokens? Again, that operative word, tokens, where people were buying like SpongeBob SquarePants, like digital images that now are somehow worth something, although nobody could explain to me how that worked. Well, the way it worked was a bunch of fake money got printed up, shoved into the economy, and it went to inefficient places like non-fungible tokens, NFTs. That said, quoting further, 15.66% agreed with both the government offering cash or digital money to vulnerable groups in the second phase. And again, this group seems to be along my wavelength where it's like, how about you just give them cash? Or think about giving them cash. And then finally, 2.30% agreed only with digital money payments in the second phase. Now that's interesting. Only 2.3% affirmatively agreed with only digital money. That's the kernel. That's the distilled truth in all of this. And that's, again, this poll is very interesting in how it has framed this issue, where it's only given those being surveyed the option of digital options. And meanwhile, the ineligible people were given some criteria outside of the digital options. But again, the folks that are inside the criteria, your only options are digital. Why is the only option digital? We've seen cash as possible. It's been handed out. Why not do it again? I don't see why that's such a major issue. And again, could it be because this is one of these WEF, World Economic Policies, World Economic Forum policies that they're trying to push throughout the world to, again, create a totalitarian surveillance of all people's transactions? And to what end? So a bunch of Davos oligarchs can all watch, track, and trace us all like a bunch of serfs throughout the world? Thailand, this is just not a great idea, And again, Gresham's Law, to name but one thing of bad money driving out good. There's a million ways this can warp the economy, but more important to that, there's a million ways in which this can harm the liberties of Thais in Thailand, abroad, and the people throughout the world. The moment we have digital money that can be tracked and traced is the moment that effectively we're under totalitarianism. That's not good for anybody. That's definitely not good for Thailand. And for this reason, I'll be keeping you updated on this channel as the situation evolves.